pork shoulder, apple cider, and warm spices. Happy autumn, everyone! Today we're making the most tender, aromatic, and cozy braise. And it all starts with choosing the right kind of meat. There are two parts to a pork shoulder. The picnic shoulder is typically sold with the skin and the bone. It might look fatty in the store, but all that fat is on the outside. The meat itself can be relatively lean and it tends to taste dry and stringy. The Boston butt is typically sold without the skin and bones, but its meat is very well marbled and tends to be darker and more succulent. This is the cut you want. It also goes under the name of boneless pork shoulder. Today mine has a big fat cap on top. That's lovely. It will keep the top of my meat very moist, but if yours doesn't, that's fine. Unlike my pork confit video, this one doesn't rely on fat as the only cooking medium. It has a sauce, so the exact amount of fat on your pork doesn't matter. If you don't eat pork, you can also use a lamb shoulder for this dish with a slightly shorter cooking time. The sauce is completely all-purpose and will work with chicken thighs, turkey thighs, and beef short ribs, basically anything you might want to braise. But the pan and cooking time will be different. I'll link to my braising videos for those other meats below, and you can always use those procedures with this sauce. But today we are using Boston butt, which brings me to the second important topic of choosing the right pan. This is one of the few braises where a Dutch oven is really the best choice. It's one of the few pans that can fit this huge cut of meat and allow you to cover it. It doesn't need to be expensive. From my testing, a $400 Le Creuset performs no better than $80 Tramontina. If you don't have a Dutch oven, you can get away with any deep oven-safe pan. If it's not deep enough for you to cover it with a lid, you can use parchment paper and then foil. The size of your pan will determine the size of your meat. If possible, you want it to be a snug fit. There's no such thing as too much braise, even if you're cooking for one person, because this dish freezes beautifully. If you have a lot of empty space in your pan, you'll need to use more liquid and might end up with a bit too much sauce. Of course, that's not a huge problem, since the sauce can be used for other dishes. The aromatics I'm using today are onions, shallots, celery, garlic, thyme, cinnamon sticks, star anise, and bay leaves. Everything is optional and the amounts are flexible. Normally, I'm not a fan of star anise, but in meat braises, it is really fantastic. Combined with other ingredients, its aroma is completely transformed from licorice to something else that I can only describe as coziness. Shallots are a pain to peel, so feel free to replace them with yellow onions if you want to save some time. And if you need to stem a ton of time, a colander comes in handy. Set your Dutch oven over high heat and add a tablespoon of neutral oil. Swirl the pan to coat the bottom. Dry the meat very well and sprinkle it with salt and pepper on all sides. Go easy on the salt since the meat will shrink a lot during cooking. Of course, my easy on the salt and your easy on the salt might be different. For all the geeky people out there, try 0.8% of salt by weight of pork. This is when I realized that I have a little problem. I was hoping these two pieces of pork would fit into my Dutch oven, but they didn't. So I had to brown them one at a time. I was a bit worried that the fat on the sides of the pan that wasn't covered by meat would burn, so I broke my rule of not disturbing the meat during browning and moved it around some to give all parts of the pan some action. Normally, I'd fill it with carrots, but the camera was already rolling and there was no time to get carrots. Don't worry, this story has a happy ending. The good news is that you don't need a deep, crusty sear for a braise. That will just toughen your meat. You just need to make it golden and to create enough brown bits on the bottom of your pan to enhance your sauce. Phew! Our brown bits survived without burning and we can start building our sauce. Turn down the heat to medium-low and add your onions, shallots, and celery. Sprinkle with salt and stir to pick up the brown bits. Cover and cook for about 5 minutes or until they start to get tender. Uncover and continue to cook until they get completely tender and start to brown, about 10 minutes. This is a good time to preheat your oven to 300 degrees. If you get impatient, it's okay to raise the heat a bit under your veggies as long as you keep an eye on them and stir periodically to prevent burning. Add the garlic and thyme and cook stirring until aromatic, just a couple of minutes. Add a 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar and a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. I'm using Tamari style soy sauce. Since I always have reduced brown chicken stock in my freezer, I'll add about 2/3 of a cup, but you can skip it. Or add some good quality store-bought chicken stock like Rolly Roti or Bell & Evans. Any stock will work here as long as it's not salted. This pork will give us plenty of gelatin and flavor, so the quality of your stock won't make or break this dish. While I was making the sauce, I figured out how to fit all that pork into the pot. I chopped off the corners, giving my roasts a semicircular shape. And voila! Everything fits. One corner was pure fat, so I got rid of it, and the other pieces went into the pot. Tuck the cinnamon, star anise, and bay leaves around the meat. When you're adding the cider, you need enough to mostly submerge the meat, but keep its fat cap above the liquid. I ended up needing 2 cups, but you will need more or less depending on how your pork fits. If you have a lot of empty space around your pork, only pour in enough cider to reach halfway up the pork. This is when I realized that one of the corners would work better under my smaller roast. This lifted its fat cap to be level with the other piece. Bring everything to a simmer. Cover the pot and place in the middle of 300-degree oven for 3 to 4 hours or until the pork is spoon soft. A thermometer doesn't work for testing braises for doneness. It's not just about reaching a particular temperature. It's about holding it there long enough for all the collagen to convert to gelatin. Plunge the tongues right through the meat and twist. There should be no resistance. The next step is crucial to the success of your dish. The meat needs to cool for at least 2 hours in its cooking liquid before serving. During the cooking time, it will push all its moisture into the sauce and it needs time to soak it back up. Unless you are starting your braise very early in the morning, you should plan to make it a day or many days in advance. Once your pork is cool enough to touch comfortably, it's ready to slice. I prefer to serve it chopped up because it allows me to remove all the unpleasant fat and connective tissue. The meat between the top 2 layers of fat is the yummiest. It's a thin layer, but make sure you save it. The fat on the outside is brown and tasty, but deep inside this roast are pockets of blubber-like material that most people don't enjoy. It's easier to remove them at this stage than after refrigeration. Remove the cinnamon sticks, star anise, and bay leaves from the sauce. If you are saving the pork for the next day, you can put the juice in the fridge. Then the fat will solidify and you can lift it off. But you can also let the juices settle for 5 minutes and carefully spoon off the fat. Whoa, that's tight. What can I say? I like to live dangerously. The juices are delicious as is, but even tastier if you thicken them. By the time I got the thickening idea, I already used some of the pork and juice, so today I am only thickening 1.5 cups of juice, but I'll give you an easy formula that will help you figure out how much flour and butter to use. Set a pot or skillet with curvy sides of a medium-low heat. For every cup of juice, add 1 tablespoon of butter. Today I have 1.5 cups of juice, so I'm using 1.5 tablespoons of butter. While your butter is melting, bring the juice to a simmer in another pot or in a microwave. Multiply the number of cups of juice by 1.3, and that's your amount of flour in tablespoons. Since I have 1.5 cups of juice, I need 1.95 tablespoons of flour, which I'll round to 2. You don't need to be too precise here. This is not baking. Cook the flour in butter gently for 5 minutes. You want the mixture to be slightly bubbly, but you don't want it to brown. Make sure you whisk during the entire cooking time. Stop once in a while to see if you have tiny bubbles. While you're whisking, you won't see them. This might look familiar. It's called the roux, just like making gravy on Thanksgiving. Pour in the braising juice and whisk thoroughly to dissolve any lumps of roux. Turn up the heat and bring to a simmer, whisking occasionally, and the sauce will thicken. Taste and correct for salt. Pour over your pork and enjoy. As all pork braises, this one is extremely versatile. You can put it in a sandwich, mix it with pasta, beans or lentils, or top it with mashed potatoes and turn it into a casserole. Not only is it delicious, but it's a Thanksgiving miracle. It kills 3 birds with 1 stone: meat, gravy, and mashed potatoes that can all be made days ahead. That video is coming up next week, so don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button for notifications.